Roses captivate us with their fragrance and their beauty, but all too often we shy away from planting them in our own garden. Well, in today's video, let's fix that because it's all about planting and caring for roses. Now, roses come in several types, from the elegant hybrid tea to the starlight clusters of the floribunda to the climbers like this right here. But no matter the type of rose, they all need certain things to look and grow their best. So let's talk about that. First of all, full sun. At least 6 hours a day is ideal. And what I have right here is a brand new arbor that is south facing. So for most of the day, it's going to get that full sun, which is perfect for any type of rose. Something else all roses have in common is really good, well-draining soil. So let me share with you what I've done here. Now, I'm in Georgia with heavy red clay, and it's nutrient rich, but it doesn't drain that well. And roses prefer well-draining soil with the nutrients. So what I've done here is I've amended the entire planting area with some really high-quality compost, and then I'm going to add it into the hole as well. So as these roots get established, they'll have access to some good compost along with the nice clay soil, but it'll help it drain better too. So let me share with you what I'm planting today. Now, these are a climbing variety. These are New Dawn roses. They have a beautiful, fragrant pink bloom, and they're vigorous growers. So these are going to look really nice once they fill in. I have one plant per column, and they're really going to grow up and go across the top, and this is going to be fantastic. Now, there are two common types of roses that you can buy. The one that you typically see in the box stores and the garden centers, well, those are grafted roses. So they have a hardy rootstock, but the top growth is called a scion, and that's grafted onto the rootstock. And so there's some advantages to that. So that's grafted roses, but I prefer own root roses. And the difference is that own root roses, as the name implies, these are plants that are grown on their own roots. They're not grafted at all. Basically, this was a cutting from the parent plant, about a year's worth of growth here. So the top and the roots are all one plant, and there is no grafting here. And so I prefer these for a number of reasons, but generally these are hardier than the grafted roses. And although winter kill is less likely with own root roses, if they were to die back to the ground in winter, they would come back true to their original variety because, unlike a grafted rose, own root roses are the same plant from the roots to the shoots. And generally, they're fuller in shape and maintain good vigor. Now, they may be a bit smaller than grafted roses when you buy them, but the trade-off for instant gratification with grafted roses is that own root roses catch up quickly, they're longer living, and will thrive for years with proper care. Now, before I put any roses or plants in the ground, I want to inspect them to make sure they're in the best shape possible. These came looking great, but I will look for any damaged or crossing branches just in case, or even buds that failed to bloom, because it's best if you just go ahead and remove those now, and that gives this plant the best chance of getting off to a good start. So I don't see anything here I even need to do. So let's go ahead and get these into the ground, and as we do, I'll talk to you about the ideal time for planting. So between spring and fall is really the best time, any time between that period of time. But here I am right in early fall, and that I consider to be the ideal time. You want to make sure that you at least have them in the ground for about 6 weeks before that first risk of frost. That should be your target for later in the year. But the reason why I love planting anything in the fall is that the air is cool, so there's not as much stress on the top growth, so they can kind of chill out there, yet at the same time, what's happening down below, the soil is warmer, and the roots love warm soil to really start growing. So they'll keep growing and adapt and get settled into the soil while the top growth is going into dormancy, but there's still no stress on that top growth. So all the action is taking place in the roots. Now, as far as the hole itself, I've dug a very large hole because these roots are going to be growing throughout the winter time, and I want them to spread out and really get established as much as possible before the spring. So I've made a pretty large hole, as you can see, compared to the size of the root ball. Now, it is deeper than the root ball, so I'll go ahead and backfill this so that it's not deep sitting in the hole. But what I want you to keep in mind when you're doing this and you're deciding what you put back in the hole, ideally, if you have good soil, just backfill it with that and you don't need to supplement it. But in my case, I do have heavy clay soil and I need good drainage. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some high quality compost to the area where I've already amended the overall planting area, but I also want it evenly mixed into the hole as well. But here's where you really need to be careful, especially with own root roses like these are right here. The roots are rather sensitive, and if you put a bagged fertilizer product mixed in with the other soil, typically that's going to be too much nitrogen, and that can burn the roots and potentially kill the plant. So avoid that, and rather than do that, either don't fertilize at all. If you have good soil, that's fine. They don't need it right away. But in my case, this high quality compost is going to add a low dose of the nutrients of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but not to the point where it's going to hurt anything. It's only going to give a little bit of benefit, which is exactly what I want, and it's going to help break up some of this clay soil. So I find it really comes in to play in a nice couple benefits here by amending it with some good quality compost. So that's what I'm going to do, and the way that I do that is I backfill some and I add some compost in here, and however you want to do it, but you're just trying to mix this up evenly. Normally I would break up the roots if the roots were all bound together in the pot, but that's not the case here. The roots are nice and loose, so I don't need to do anything with that. But now that I see where I've placed it, what I want to do is make a little bit of an adjustment right away. This is the best time. If you're going to make any adjustments to the root ball, do it before it's all settled in. So I've moved it a little closer to here because this is going to be the base for the upgrowth, and the closer the better, but I still have plenty of room for the roots to expand. All right, so more backfilling and some more compost in here. Maybe about 50-50, just mixing it all together. I can see that this is going to be a little low in the hole, so this will be a good time to make one more adjustment, raise it up a little bit. That's better, because when I'm watering this, I don't want all the water to just bowl in here and be held in place. It is going to drain, but if it weren't, you'd run the risk of rotting your roots. So having it up a little bit higher is a smart thing to do. All right, more backfill, more compost, mixing it up, and just repeating this process. All right, now that I have backfilled and the rose is planted, it's time for a drink of water. Good watering. And if you receive your roses and it's going to be a few days or any time at all before you're going to plant them, you want to go ahead and inspect them and give them a drink of water, probably because through that shipping time, they can dry out, especially if they're not packaged properly. In my case, they were packaged beautifully and I was planting them the very next day. So they were in good shape and I knew I was going to get to the watering right now. So at the very least, you want to make sure that you do that once you backfill. So that's the next step here, is to give them a nice drink with a gentle flow of water. And if you want to just take a break and let that water soak in and then go at it again, definitely do that until you feel like you've really got nice saturation at the roots. But just notice that as I'm doing this, the water's going in and it's drawing down. And that is a lot of the benefit of when you add compost to that. It's breaking up the tightness of the clay and it's opening up some pore space. So that's another advantage of amending the planting hole with some high quality compost in this case. So I'll do this for another minute or so. Make sure that the roots are nice and moist. And then it's on to the next step. And the next step, I can do that at the same time, is to add some mulch. And I use about 2 inches of a high quality mulch. Now it can be really anything you want, but I like it to be a natural product so that it's breaking down over time to improve the soil. And in my case, I have free arborist wood chips. So this is from a tree service company that dumped off a load near the street by my house. And I just tap into that and I can bring it over here or anywhere I want in my garden or landscape area and apply it around the base of the plant. Now as you do that, again, a good 2-inch layer is a nice depth to go for, but I also like to leave a little room around the base of the plant so the mulch isn't right on top of the stems. That's just best practices for disease suppression and pathways for pests to make their way in. So you can see I'm pulling back the mulch a little bit and giving it about 2 inches. Now the mulch is going to do several things. Some of the most important ones in this case, it's going to hold in the moisture and it's going to moderate the soil temperatures down here and help keep the soil a little bit warmer, which is great for that root development. And it's also going to do a fantastic job of suppressing weeds. That's very important any time of the year. And then ultimately, the mulch is going to break down to improve the soil and continue to make it better. So there are a lot of benefits to using mulch, so definitely be sure to do that. And once I get everything planted, I'll mulch this entire area. All right, so I've done everything I need to do to get these properly planted. I'm really happy with the timing of this coming into later in fall with enough time so that these can be settled in before that first frost arrives. But then now what do? Well, if you've done everything I've told you so far, there's really nothing else to do for this time of year. But there are a couple things I want to make sure that you don't do. First of all, don't fertilize. These plants are going into dormancy, and fertilizer would stimulate growth, and we do not want that, so stay off the fertilizer. And you also don't need to continue to look for opportunities to prune. If we made any pruning, it was just to remove dead or diseased or crossing branches, and that's just corrective and precautionary, but you don't need to do any more pruning because that's going to stimulate growth too. We don't want that new growth coming into winter time. All right, so let's say we've made it through winter, everything's good, we've mulched it, we've watched the watering to make sure that there's still adequate moisture in the soil. And now we're starting to see new growth in the springtime. What about the fertilizer at that point? Well, these are still newly planted. They're not even a year old. They're only a few months old. And that's especially true with the plants that are own root, like these are right here. Those roots are still very tender, and any excess nitrogen fertilizer, again, just as a reminder, is going to burn the roots and it could potentially put the plants at risk. So you want to really be careful with that. If you're going to fertilize it all, and this is for the first year of their life, especially with own root roses, just go with something mild like a fish emulsion. That's a really good nitrogen source and it's not too strong. And that's going to be your protocol for that first year. You can do it in early to mid-spring and then mid-summer. Those would be the two main times that you would do it. And another good option for fertilizer choice, something that's organic and slow release, that's kind of be your guide on what you choose. But Milorganite is a good organically derived source of nitrogen fertilizer, so that can work very well also. Other things you'll start doing as you come into spring, pruning is essential for healthy roses. In early spring, you want to do that by removing dead or overgrown branches, which will encourage fresh growth. And then when it comes to watering, go deep and infrequent so that you can promote strong roots. And mulching around the base certainly helps retain moisture and suppresses weeds. And here's one that you probably already know. Roses are no strangers to pests and diseases. Aphids, spider mites, and black spot are common culprits, and natural solutions like introducing beneficial insects and ensuring good air circulation can certainly help keep these issues in check. And organic fungicides and neem oil may be a good option to keep black spot in check. Growing roses can be a rewarding endeavor. Challenging at times, yes, but if you pay attention to the unique requirements of your type of rose as well as the basics that we covered today, you'll be enjoying roses for seasons to come.